Once upon a time there was a little girl called Goldilocks, and she woke up early one morning and decided she was going to go for a walk. She headed out on the walk. She was gone about a half an hour or so and she realized she'd left without eating her breakfast, so she was quite hungry. And she could smell something cooking in the air. She wasn't quite sure what it was. She came to a little clearing, and in the clearing there was a little cottage, and from the cottage chimney there was smoke coming from the chimney. So Goldilocks called out, "Anybody home?" There was no answer. So she knocked carefully on the door, still no answer, and then the door opened to her push. And inside the door there were 3 brochures, and one said, "Daddy Bear's Porridge Incorporated." So she looked at the brochure, and the brochure was very corporate, very stiff, lots of details about how long Daddy had been in business and where he'd been founded, but really very little about the porridge. And then she picked up Mammy Bear's Porridge. That was much more promising, lots of nice pictures of porridge, but no details about where you could get the porridge or how you would buy it or find it. And then she picked up Baby Bear's Porridge brochure, and it was just right. And similarly, there was some laptops on the desk beside the door, and again, daddybearsporridge.com, too corporate, mammybearsporridge.com, too fluffy and unclear, and she tries Baby Bear's Porridge, and it's just right. Okay? Why are we starting a story about Goldilocks? Business presentation? Fairy stories? Because in business what we find is that we all fool ourselves with the story that what our customers are looking for is the first or the fastest or the fittest or the most technologically advanced or the hottest or the coolest. And really what we know for sure is that our customers is looking for is just right. So the question is, in many respects, what's just right for your customers? So that's the question we have to start any branding conversation about. Because for many of us, that's the challenge we face, isn't it? When it comes to branding or representing our business. It's very easy when it's one-to-one. Very easy for us to represent our own business, to sell our service or our product. The challenge comes about when you have to start having other people represent it, or advertisements representing it, or search terms in your website representing it in some way. Isn't that the challenge very often in business as we start to grow from one to many? So first I'm going to kick off with just talking a little bit about how a brand works. And many of us believe we have a good understanding of how brands work, but I don't believe many small business owners understand that they have this very, very powerful asset available to you in order to build your business, your brand. So how does a brand work? If I was to say image, people often think of brand as image, or promise, or reputation, or profile, right? Those things would be true. And I think there's often kind of an understanding that brands can be a little bit manipulative, in that notion that somehow or other you're being persuaded or coerced to buy something that isn't good for you in some way. Well, in our experience, success in the marketplace is down to your ability to influence choice. So we believe branding is something to do with influencing choice. And the purpose of a brand, we would suggest, is to make it the natural choice of your customer. So I just want you to think, each of you, just for your own business, or for a business that you might be working with, what would it mean in your business if you were the natural choice of your customer? That's been a carefully selected term, natural choice. What does it mean to be the natural choice? What we know is that for many businesses, they talk about, if you were the natural choice, first of all, you'd have to do far less promotion because you'd be talking to the people who were obviously just right for you in some way. Not the hottest, not the coolest, just right. That you'd probably find yourself having a better relationship with customers if you were the natural choice. Isn't there a sense in which businesses that we think of as the natural choice? In Ireland, for example, Avoca is clearly the natural choice of many of its customers. Wouldn't you agree? And one of the advantages of a business like that is that they don't have to work so hard to win over customers because it's kind of obvious, isn't it? So there's all sorts of savings. And generally speaking, if you're the natural choice of your customers, you also find that people are more forgiving of mistakes, more tolerant. It's a relationship, so as far as they're concerned, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you make a mistake. They're more inclined to help you succeed. Think of the last time you read a business story in the paper about a business, a brand that you cared about, and you were pleased that they were being successful. For some people, when they read of Apple's success, they get a certain amount of pleasure out of it. So imagine if your customers, because you were the natural choice of those customers, were getting pleasure from your success. They wanted to see you succeed. They'd be much more inclined to tell other people about you, isn't that right? So there's lots of reasons why our brand should be something that we work towards to help us to become the natural choice of customers. But that's only one side of the story. Let me tell you another side. How long does the typical main shop take, typically, for the week? About 40 minutes, would that be right? From America's 45 minutes, yeah? Imagine for a moment how long your shop would take if you had to interrogate, question, check every purchase that you made as you went around the supermarket. Your weekly shop would probably take you, without exaggeration or much exaggeration, a week. Imagine if you had to check all of these pastas. Where were they made? Who made them? How they were made? What the ingredients were? How long the person had been in business? All of those things that might help us to make an informed decision. Is this pasta just right for me? And that's just the pasta aisle. Imagine moving into toothpaste or moving into, baby care. All the decisions that we have to make. So I would suggest that becoming the natural choice of customers is only one side of the story. What do you think the other side is? It's to help our customers choose what's just right for them. And as soon as we begin to understand brand in that balanced way, that it's a relationship between buyers and sellers. It's not me selling to you or you buying from me. It's about our identifying that what I have to offer is just right for you, and that what you want, you'll find in me. And that becomes a very, very powerful thing. Because if you think, for example, of some of the best-known car brands, the BMWs, the Mercedes, the Audis, have you ever seen somebody leave the forecourt with their new Audi or their new BMW with a frown? Have you ever seen somebody in Evoca who's just paid twice, more or less, what they'd have paid if they went to one of the coffee shops offering the coffee and pastry deal? They probably paid about twice. It's about $3.50 typically that deal elsewhere. In Evoca they pay probably closer to $7. Are those customers frowning? No, because they're happy. Why? Because it's the right choice. Because for them, that little bit extra is there's value in it for them. Would you agree? So it's really important when we talk about a brand then that we understand that the brand influences choice by standing for the relationship between the buyer and the seller. And all of the other things that we think about when we think about brands aren't untrue. Of course, there is a promise in there somewhere. Of course, there's an image in there, the image of the company that's going to enter into that relationship with me. But when we think about brand as relationship between buyers and sellers, it makes it much, much easier for us to start putting our brand to work. Would you agree? Any of us who've been in relationships, I don't mean deep, meaningful, lifelong relationships, but successful relationships, business relationships, studying relationships between yourself and a teacher. Any of the things that we have, any of us who've been in those successful relationships know that when the relationship is right, then that relationship can go on for as long as it needs to, because each is getting from the relationship what they need, right? The great teacher loves to teach, and the great student loves to learn. So when you bring those two people together, they're happy. They'll teach and learn for as long as they can. Does that make sense? So it's really important that we start to think of our business and the brand that represents our business as somehow standing for, it isn't the relationship. Just like marriage isn't the relationship. The relationship is between two people. Marriage is just what we call the relationship. And brand is what I call the relationship between businesses and their customers.